I just pressed the go live button there with you, Andre. Hopefully that's going to work now. All right, man. How's it going?
Good, good, Jamie. How are you, sir?
Not too bad, not too bad, despite everything that's going on, all the craziness.
It's wild. It's crazy, man.
The world is going insane.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Hopefully, art saves it all, man.
I think so. I think it's one of the things that throughout history has been the ultimate weapon against all this shit, right?
hmm Yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, bring everybody together a little bit.
Yeah, man, for sure. Um, so I'll give you a little intro here. For those who don't know, Andre Malcolm, he's a prolific Japanese tattoo style artist, dragon master. He's published a book of 100 dragons. Um, he's worked at Analog, was it Analog Tattoo there with Adrian?
Analog tattoo. Yep.
Analog Tattoo and Skull and Sword with Grimy, and was Yaturo there at the time as well, or
Utaro was there.
Yutaro?
Yeah.
I love his stuff too. He's been doing some amazing videos on YouTube too, man. That
Yeah.
guy's doing really cool stuff.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And let's see here. And you've been doing a bunch of seminars in the recent years here as well, right? Like at conventions?
Yeah, I've done two so far with Bill Canales.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
Bill's awesome tattooer from San Diego.
Yeah, I know Bill's work very well.
Yeah. Um, and I've been following Bill since I was living in New York, and he's one of my one of my favorite modern age tattooers. Definitely from the West Coast. I think a lot
Nice.
more underrated than most. Hard worker. I feel like I love his stuff. Very powerful.
Oh,
Um,
he's been around a while too. I remember seeing some interviews in some magazines back in the day.
mhm.
Um, and you're working. You have a private studio now, or
I have a private studio now. Finally going back to work Wednesday.
oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm tomorrow.
Oh, you tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a good feeling to finally get back at it. I can't remember the last time I've spent this long not
It's
tattooing.
rough. It's rough. It was rough, man. I feel for a lot of tattooers, um, especially newer ones that just started, you know. But yeah, yeah, this is 4 months, man. 4 months without work.
Yeah, this has never happened. Even with, at least when it was illegal in New York, people could just still completely go underground, and it wasn't like that
Yeah,
big. Heard
it was
about them?
easy. It was easier
Yeah,
to do tattoos then in the last 4 months because it was just kind of like you were being monitored. A lot of tattooers didn't know that they were being monitored by the government.
yeah,
Um, um, and so you couldn't do anything if they were purposely monitoring if you were promoting tattooing on your Instagram or whatever social media, or they had from what I've heard out here, they were purposely had people stationed outside of tattoo studios.
oh wow,
Yeah, yeah. My landlord called the cops on me because she thought I was tattooing because she just obeys. Yeah, that's weird.
wow.
Yeah. I'm playing video games with my friends and I'm streaming on Twitch and I'm laughing and she called the cops and the cops came and they were like, "Are you tattooing?" I was like, "No, you can come up here right now. It's just me by myself."
Wow.
It's weird. It was like some weird Gestapo shit.
Oh, that is hectic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I just got into a lot of. Actually, I've been playing a lot of video games too. I can't lie. I've been playing Sekiro.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a great game. Oh, yokai. There's a lot of yokai in there.
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
Out of it.
And there's a new one coming out actually.
Ghost of
Go.
Tsushima.
Yes. Oh, it looks
I
amazing.
pre-ordered it already. I got that.
Oh yeah, I did too.
There's a mask that comes with it.
Oh really?
There's a box set. It's on Amazon. You can order it now. And if you get it, it's like you get a mask, like the what's the mask? samurai mask would wear, the on with the Hanya mouth.
Yeah, what do they call those again?
I can't remember. I can't remember. It slipped my mind right now. But
And this is Mempo, I think. Mempo?
yeah,
Or...
just the lower part here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm getting that.
Nice one.
Hmm.
Oh, rad. Um, yeah, let's see here. So dragons, yeah, we're gonna talk about some dragon stuff here. I'm not much of an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to, I don't try to memorize it because the information's out there,
So much.
but yeah, exactly, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but it's interesting what kind of goes in and sticks and becomes part of your style down the road or whatever it might be. I mean, I guess that all stems from influences, right?
Hmm.
Uh, we talked about Bill Canals. Um, who would you say some more like modern influences for your dragons would be?
Um, I'm not really looking at a lot of tattoo art for my dragons. I'm kind of more looking at um what other artists would do. So there's a lot of I look at a lot of like a lot of anatomy encyclopedias.
Uh,
Um, there's another artist. She's an artist from the Star Wars era of her name is Terrell Whitlatch,
okay.
and she basically designed all the wildlife that you ever saw in Star Wars. She did.
Oh, I have the Wildlife of Star Wars book actually in my collection. I bet she did that.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was doing the first Dragon book, I was kind of like referencing some of the way she approached anatomy. Um, there's a lot of like concept artists that I look at now.
Mm,
So just to see how they break down structures in animals. So snake structure is pretty easy, but when you want to get the bend and the folds just right to make the underbelly have a certain motion, um, I'll I'm comfortable with that. But like when it comes to like leg motion, arm motion, so like the like from shoulder to to shoulder to bicep to forearm
okay.
is different from the back leg, of the dragon. So like, you can look at lions um, lizards and stuff like that, and then for the back leg is a totally different. It's one, two,
Yeah, it's like backwards, like a frog's leg almost, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. So you have three to four. You have three motions for the back. One, two, three, and then the foot. So it's four. So you have four different motions for the back of the leg, and you have two to three for the front. If you really want to get technical on the shoulder, and then arm, and then more, the arm, which is a V. So it's a that's what I'm kind of like really focusing more on, and then incorporating that with just the traditional part of tattooing, kind of like looking at like hokusai or kunioshi.
Nice.
But
Nice.
so my approach to a lot of my dragons now are more like what concept artists would do. I've been doing it lately. Like I've been posting all my favorite artists, or artists that I've always followed since I was younger, from comic books all the way till now.
Oh, nice one, nice one.
Yeah,
Did you want to be a comic artist when you were a kid growing up?
I did.
Uh, and a lot of my friends tattooing now have the same kind of story. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to do. I um I wanted to work for Marvel. I wanted to I but I never worked up the nerve to do it. I never wrote Marvel and said, here's some of my sketches and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
I was just so shy and such an introvert, and when I was younger, and then the way my mom raised me, she was in a cult. She was like a Jehovah's Witness and stuff like that. So it was
Oh,
money was looked down upon,
yeah.
and things like that. And I'm surprised she let me read comic books, but and then it turned from comic books to manga, and then manga to anime.
Yeah, nice, nice.
And then that's been my life even till now. Like I'm a 40-year-old adult that watches cartoons to this day. So it's
Well, we're in the same club, man.
yeah, yeah. And but then I was like, now just playing video games. It's kind of like I see the same thing because it's just like all these people that I look up to are still doing what they do. Like Jim Lee is still drawing comic books. Greg Capullo is still drawing comic books. And they don't look like they've aged a bit.
They stayed young. They
Yeah,
stayed young.
doing what
And
they love. Yeah,
yeah, I've seen a lot of parallels with that with artists and musicians, and thought the exact same thing actually. They stayed young at heart, so they look young.
yeah,
Very interesting. And then you get the real hard asses. I mean, Todd McFarlane, he's still, yeah, maybe doesn't look so young anymore, but he's not young either. I heard that guy got rejected like 50 times.
50 times, but just kept doing it.
Yeah, and even when he got accepted and when he was selling all the comics, they said, "Can you do that webbing differently? We don't like that, and
Right,
stop doing this and stop doing that." And he's like, "I'm selling the books.
right.
I got,
Yeah, and it's something that like you can kind of see. If a guy like that who is changed the look of, like, there was no one that drew Spider-Man like that before him,
Mm.
but everybody has taken a little bit after Todd McFarlane,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and it's crazy that the people that told him no, 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 still can't believe. They had to just shut up and just be like, all right, he's doing something right, like that. What am I not seeing? What am I not seeing? They never really asked themselves that. What am I not seeing? He
Mm.
still was able to um, break or push the envelope, and it was such an inspiring thing. It made me realize, like, I should have just really stuck to drawing comics, but I don't know. But now, like, tattooing, I fell into tattooing, and I put all my energy into that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I see the connection with comics and the way you do your dragons. What I've said it before. I think you are the best dragon artist in the U.S. And the reason being is because you have such a good understanding of the anatomy, such a good understanding of the structure. Now, that's one thing to master, the structure and the anatomy. If you don't get the animation and motion in there, like what comic artists are trained to do,
Yeah,
then it's just a rigid image that's maybe done well, right? And I
yeah.
think what you've done that
Thank
goes
you.
beyond anybody else is exactly that.
Right. Thank you. There's a question like how did I develop that, or is it
Well,
just
maybe a follow-up question would be, do you think that would be connected maybe to getting good at gesture drawing, for example,
yeah.
or
Yeah, I follow the rules of tattooing with drawing. I remember, like I remember reading the shop that I started at, Tough City, was great. The owner wasn't fully there all the time, but he had really great artists there, and it wasn't a traditionally put together tattoo shop. It was graffiti based. It was graffiti orientated. So with
mm,
graffiti artists, it's kind of like you have to study um other great graffiti artists, and maybe you might have somebody that gives you a letter style, and you evolve from that letter style that artist gave you. It's like a very it's a weird kind of not even apprenticeship or mentorship, but it's kind of like, here's this style, and evolve from that, and they watch you and see how you do it. So Tough City was kind of like built on that. But Med had a lot of tattoo magazines from like the early 90s, I think, like 80, late 80s, mid 80s to late 80s, all the way to like at the time, which was like 2000 or something like that. So I didn't have the resources to even buy tattoo magazines before tattooing. So I had no real um, education on like what tattooing was about.
Mm.
So when I read what a lot of the different tattooers were talking about, like the really good ones that were in the mag, they're talking about the tattoo has to be designed very, very readable aspect. Um, Bob Roberts talked about that, and then when I read the article on the Lou family, that was in Tattoo Review, I think, and then there was another one that was for International Tattoo Art, and when I saw how Philip Lou or Felix approached tattooing, it kind of like I said, oh, I want my tattoos to look like that because Philip had this very, it reminded me of a very graphic style of of comic books. It reminded me of like how Todd McFarlane had like a very flair to his work, or Jim Lee's very his flair or his energy, and I was like, I want my tattoos to look like that, not like Philip Lou's, but I want my tattoos to be readable like that.
Yeah.
And and now when I mean by readable, not just straightforward, but you can look at it at every angle of the body. You see something really powerful, right? And
Yeah.
and then I just immersed myself in that. So like it was kind of um and then when I started reading about dragons, I had gotten this book. I don't remember where I got it. I got it at this I got it at this Chinese bookstore, and it talked about dragons, and it talked about like how the Eastern dragon is not like any other dragon that you see in the world.
Mm.
It it reflects the dragon you draw reflects your inner energy, your inner what you put on paper. It has to come from you. It has to come. Has to like. It's your inner self. It's what you. It's your inner energy, your inner chi gets pushed out in each one of your dragons.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's like it has to have like this. It has to have this. It shows who you are. So if you are angry at that time, the dragon might look angry. If it's happy at that time, if you're happy at that time, the dragon is gonna look happy. So it's your inner energy. Is your inner energy always happy? All right, so your dragon's gonna have this like really cool look to it. So I kind of like thought about that, and then I put that thought in my mind every time I kind of like drew a dragon, and then I would look at like how a comic book artist would break down thumbnails. So it's got a thumbnail. So you're thinking about how do you want this Spider-Man to swing from the building, or how do you want Daredevil to use his billy clubs, or how like each artist who how they approached their subject matter. They put a little bit of something into that subject matter. That's why Spider-Man looks so good when Todd McFarlane drew it, and why Batman, when Todd McFarlane did Batman, Batman had his flair to his cape. You know what I mean? They didn't just draw it just to draw it, but there was something they did. They did they did the research in each character. Like when John Romita Jr. took on Daredevil, I think it's the best run of Daredevil ever. But there's a new guy that's doing Daredevil. I love him. Or Joe Quesada. Joe Quesada is another artist that I love. He had this very flair to how he took on Daredevil or or any one of the subject matters that he did for Marvel Comics. So I was like, well, what did they all do? Or they all used thumbnails. And as they did the thumbnail, they refined each drawing, and so like each drawing, and then you see that how this thumbnail, which is this very rudimentary. So you couldn't even make you had to know what you were looking for because it was so messy, this thumbnail. But the
Mm.
end result, you were like, oh, that's it. You know what I mean? So like that's kind of like why I do the dragons that I do. Yes, I looked at how Philip Lou did it. I looked at how Mick did it. I'm not afraid to say I was, because I had a wall. I had a wall right in front of me in front of my desk, and I had all the best tattooers at the time when I was looking at.
Yeah.
and it was from Philip to Mick to Roper to Luke Atkinson, Grime, Marcus Pacheco, um, Shotzi, excuse me, Horiyoshi, Tomo, um, um, uh, um, there's a bunch, and I'm not trying to leave a lot of the people out, but this is what this is from the magazines I saw back in the day. You know, even to Chris Kahn and Tim Lehigh and Ed Hardy, and like, so I had this wall, and I had to study, and I was like, what makes all these tattooers' works pop out? Why do everybody talk about them so well? Like, yo, they
Mm.
this, and I had to do that. I had to study all these great artists.
And it's not just tracing them. It's like
Oh
when
yeah,
you're saying, what is it that makes
yeah,
these guys stand out? Then you've really got to think about it. And that's where the thumbnails, I think, maybe come in, because now you're exploring the life, like getting those lifelines in there first, right?
right,
And
right. The lifelines, what you're saying, that like the lifelines, the life energy, the energy that they put into what they did, you know. And then I read an article about Aaron Kane. Aaron Kane said, don't do what the other tattooer just did,
mm,
because you're only picking up from where they left off.
yeah,
But then that also contradicts the situation too, because I want to get good as how they are, but then how do I find my own way? And that's where it came into, like, well, I'll still look at these people, but then like I will force myself to do the dragon to move like this. Or then I would also think about things that when I growing up, when I was a little kid on the islands, you know, we had geckos or we had green lizards in the house. You can't get rid of nature when you live in the tropics. You can try
yeah,
your best, but there's a lizard that's going to be in your room, you
yeah.
know.
The face in the nighttime and stuff like this, even like yeah,
Yeah, if I'm walking, if I go to my grandmother's house, I'll see a big old iguana. Iguana is like 12, you know, like 12, like how thing is probably like about like 4 feet long.
wow,
You know what I mean? A 4 foot long iguana, and
mini dragon.
yeah, and then I would be, as a little kid, I'd be captivated by these things, because it was just like, what is that? I know it's a lizard, but look how it's looking at me. And then so if I do my dragons, I would think about how that lizard was looking at me while I was in the forest, and and it comes back, you know. So like, oh, why are my spines that look a certain way? Because that's the iguana I would chase all the time, and if I grabbed it, I would play with its back spines, or I'd rub my hand against its scales, and it was like, well, I got a feeling for it. So like, these are the things that I still try to incorporate into it's coming from multiple sources. It's coming from tattooers, it's coming from nature, it's coming from artists, from comic book artists, concept artists. It's an amalgamation of all these different things that make each dragon. Even when I do a Kirin now, I'm not looking at a Kirin. I'll look at the Kirins that are in books, because I've drawn them so much from Japanese reference, but there's not a lot of Kirins.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of Kirin references that you would see, like you would see a dragon. And even when you think about it, there's not a lot of dragon references out there. There's probably, like, I'd say 100, or probably like not even 100, probably like 50 paintings.
yeah, yeah. The classics, right? We
Yeah,
remember the classics, like the famous Hogai or the
yeah,
focus.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because now everybody stood on the shoulders of that a little bit, and like you say, combining with like the principles of comic art, which is all about structure and life force and movement. And it's funny too what you're saying about putting personality into the thing. I've often thought this, and people have thought I was crazy talking about it, but I'd be like, my old boss, he used to draw these dragons, and he's this
Hmm.
kind of biker guy with a funny mustache and beard. And every time I saw one of his finished dragons, I thought, that looks like him. The face looks like him.
Yeah. Philip,
And
I think Philip did it too. When you look at some of these dragons, Philip's dragons look like him. You know what I mean? There's a
the eyes and everything, even like something about it, the feeling of it, the energy of it, they're not necessarily just like angry for the sake of being angry. There's different emotions going on
Yeah,
there.
you have to capture that emotion. Well, there's that one famous, one of my favorite back pieces from Philip, but it's the blue face Oni, and it's kind of like this, and it
Oh,
looks
the
like
one
Philip. When you kind
below.
of Philip's brow, and there's no, it's like kind of there, you know. So he just kind of, and I like that. I like that it's not just from a. He took it and he applied the lines and the structure. He stripped down the rendering, or like he took out as much Western influence out of it and put the Japanese influence, but still kept some Western influence to it. I don't know. I can't explain it, but it's what that you can see his energy into it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so that's what I
yeah. He sort of fused those parallels I've noticed too. Like,
yeah
so later on, after learning how to use the brush and everything, I've kind of found out like, holy shit, all of the things that I loved about comic art is all the same things I love about the brush. Those
right
fat lines,
right
gestural shapes like the ohm shapes or the
yeah
C shapes or the lazy.
totally
Uh, all of those things
right
were possibly even taken from these old Japanese woodblock prints and things
yeah
like that, brought into Western comics and
yeah
then added upon.
totally. You know when you look at comic books, you know the one of the more important elements in it is the inker. You know,
Hmm.
because you're the artist. So we do a pencil sketch on either lead, blue, blue pencil, or red pencil, or whatever pencil you want to use. But the inker comes in and he puts the lines to it. You know, there's Scott Williams.
Yeah, and he like all brush basically, I
Yeah,
think.
he's all brush. You know, he's the old master. He's from the old guard of inkers. He's still revered to this day. Him and Jim Lee, they've worked together for so long, so long.
Oh yeah.
Todd McFarlane started out as an inker and came and then worked his way up to a penciler. But when you see him put his inks over any artist, then you see this you see there's a different energy. Like I saw him ink over. I love when he inks over Greg Capullo.
Hmm.
Um, um, and I love sometimes when I see him ink over Jim Lee, it's kind of like yo, it's a different. His energy is blended in with Jim Lee just right. So the inker puts in a lot of energy into the spread. You know, there's a lot that but some still use the brush and some use nibs and
Yeah.
whatever you whatever however you approach it, um, there is this energy that gets put into it, you know, and it's I think that's what I try to do um, when I I'm doing the final line drawing of a dragon. I'm
Hmm.
thinking about like now I'm thinking about like how am I gonna move my machine? You know, how am I gonna move my machine? How am I, you know, like what needle will I use for this? Like if I use this, could I line out this whole thing and give it this brush pen look?
A
You know?
single pass
Yeah,
pull like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I see that in your work. Your dragons have this very powerful look, very fluid arms. You know what I mean? And I like that. I like that. I like that that shows up in your work, and it's because it's because you've been refining your style for such a long time that you can see it. You just know, you know, you could just see like, oh, that's Jamie's work. You know, it's different from um anybody because it's just kind of like how much work you put into it, how much effort you put into the effort shows. The
I
master and
think I
becoming
made more mistakes than a lot of people who just got it right away. But then it's like
you're gonna
that's
make
an interesting
mistakes.
thing to learn from though is like the broken arms, the broken legs,
Mm-hmm.
the spines that need the chiropractor work and stuff like that, you know,
Yeah,
until finally it's like, okay, oh, that's a decent dragon now. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Or the crowding of claws, you know,
oh yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
silhouettes and
keeping
you
a
know.
strong, I mean, like your work has a very strong silhouette to it. You can, I learned that from Utaro. Utaro told me one time, when you there has to be a silhouette.
Mm.
I didn't understand that, and this is after I did the Dragon book. You know what I mean? So I look at the Dragon book now, like, ugh. But there's still things that I was doing it, but I didn't understand what I was really. But I was able to pull it off in some of them. But the majority of the time, you do have to have like a very strong silhouette. Things have to be separate, unless it's like personal preference. But it's still kind of designed well. Like the anatomy. I think my thing is like the more stronger your anatomy is, the better it will be translated. Like it's kind of like understand, like this is my child's book, so like I even try to look at like this elephant, like maybe I could do a dragon this thick,
Mm.
so I look at these things like, oh, look how hairy this elephant is, like this all this fur on it, so I can incorporate that into a design, understanding all these animals that make up the animal kingdom. Is There has to be a really strong structure behind it, like, so then even if you put like your own personal taste on top of that anatomy, it still has anatomy to it. It still has that. Still has that. It still has a very strong skeletal structure, muscle structure, and then skin on top. You know?
Yeah, yeah, this is super important stuff. I agree. Like the contour lines that make you believe, make you see it in a three-dimensional space instead of making it flat. But not that there's anything wrong with flat. Maybe flat silhouette based off of an embroidery design is good too. In fact, it's almost sometimes more difficult.
Yeah.
Go that direction.
Yeah, like think about it like this. Like I try to go back to this comic book artist, and he's probably one of the weirder styles of comic book. But Sam Keith, right? He did the Max. I mean, before he left Marvel, he did Hulk and Wolverine, but he drew them. He drew Hulk and Wolverine so aggressive, like it just didn't make any sense what you were looking at.
All the
They
bang,
weren't
everything from the 90s and stuff, right?
it was not, they were just so stubby looking, short looking guys, like that, like caveman style, something that you would see in this old cartoon. But his style was based on really good rudimentary um classic based anatomy.
Mm.
He put his own wild loose style on top of it, and that's what, like, I really love about a guy like Sam Keith or Mike Mignola. He does Hellboy. You look at his older works, it was way more traditionally comic book style. But now he's been doing comic books for so long. He has a very stripped down, loose style. It's like a loose pencil. He's just doing very simplistic shapes. But when you look at it, it's like it comes from understanding anatomy. It just comes from that, And I think that was a thing that I am learning to do now. Like one of the hardest animals to draw for me right now are tigers. I've done a few tiger back pieces, but each of those, like, I'm coming to the understanding now, like, oh, a tiger is like this. In my mind, I have it around the animal, but a tiger is not round. Its body's it's like a rectangle,
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like a cross
just like
section.
that, exactly, right. And now I'm like, okay, I fully understand it. And
Mm.
I look at those back pieces that I did, and I still love them. But guess what I did? I had to make sure that the anatomy was just right, even though they're my older stuff. The
Hmm.
anatomy was there. I had to do the anatomy right, um, um, and it made the silhouette a lot stronger. It made the subject matter a lot stronger. And with dragons, it's still like that. It's sometimes it's um, I fight with it. I fight with making sure that it's pleasing. Like it's how is this gonna look 20 years from now when I'm, 60 years old, and is it gonna hold up? Is it gonna, you know, it's
And I think you're one of the few that did get it. I mean, it's one of the most difficult subject matter to tackle, and I think part of that is so with the tiger, for example, there's like what is it? There are those 20 different poses of the Chinese tiger paintings and stuff like
mhm.
that, and everyone uses them and reuses them and reuses them.
Yeah,
Dragon, we don't really have much of that. I mean, there's a few of them out there, but
yeah,
they're not set in stone.
yeah.
And so to be able to reinvent the wheel with something that's already been done so many times, it's a heavy task to take on, but it's also one of the most addicting ones. It's like
Hmm.
I can't get my brain off of
Yeah. Oh,
trying to
dude, I mean, I do a dragon a day.
nice.
I do one dragon a day. I just kind of, all right, leave me alone. Let me get it out. Then the rest of the day, I'm just kind of like, but I wake up and I'm like, I'm try this. And sometimes I get stumped, and then I just go back and I look at a dragon painted from Chen Rong,
Mm.
and I'll look at a Hokusai, and I'll look at a Kuniyoshi, and I'll look at a whole guy, and I'll look at a, I look at all these different dragons. I try not to look at, mainly. I don't look at what tattooers do anymore. I mean, I still do. I'll look at like Joe Lang does in Australia. I'll find a Mick Dragon, or I'll find a Philip, or or a Tomo Dragon. I'll find these. I'll still look at those, but it's something about looking at like what these men and women did back in ancient Japan or China. I try to it's something about those dragons beat out anything that's any one of us modern day tattooers can do. It's something about like why does Chen Rong's nine dragon scroll still have this power to it. Still this the code that just like it's just, oh man, like I'm yeah, it's an addictive kind of, it's an addictive it's addictive, man. It's it's bad. Is there one point of dragon that you guys consider closest to perfect? One painting of a dragon that you consider. What do you think is the closest? Can you see what he just that
The
question?
one that always comes to my mind is that whole guy one, but that it's subjective, isn't it? It's like,
The whole other with the other little dragon wrapped around it.
yeah, yeah, the one with the two.
Yeah, that's a classic one. Which one I really love? The one that's on the temple, the temple
Oh
roof.
yeah,
That
and it's
one.
basically head to tail on that one in
Oh
the circle.
yeah, in a circle. I mean, that's a modern. That's what I feel like. I feel like that's what like Mick and Philip were looking at when they went to Japan, and
Yeah,
uh,
and they're guys that can do from head to tail with no problems as well. Where, oh, I mean, working out all the problems. Uh, and again, those guys had a comic background, maybe different comics like
mhm,
underground stuff, but same thing, illustration and anatomy and structure and everything like that, and then applying that to the old. But a lot of people hide things behind clouds, or they hide things behind,
mhm,
um, a water splash or whatever. But not just because, oh, that's going to look cool, but it's because, oh, I can't fucking figure this part out. I'll just.
right. Just put
But to
that.
be able to figure from head to tail, that's.
Yeah, I fight my. I have to figure it out. And then sometimes, like I'll walk if I can't figure it out, I'll walk away from it, and then come
Mm,
back, and I was like, oh, you know why that didn't work? Because this you just did this wrong, and I'm like, oh, and I had to erase. I just erase it, like fucking Jim Lee says it, man. Don't be afraid to erase. I've
mm.
seen him sketch out something. I'm like, this is amazing. And then what does he do? He's like, I didn't like this, and he just And I'm
Oh,
just
I've seen that. Yeah, on some of his live, and he'll erase the head completely off and draw a new head, and then
and right,
erase
yeah,
put
and
another one.
yeah, because then there's so it's this it's a thing. I find myself I will, and then the time I have to work it out. And then at times I just leave the mistake there. You know, I
Yeah.
I've seen enough people do the dragon I did, and then they fix it, and then I'm like, oh, that's what I did wrong. So I don't mind putting out the material sometimes and figure and then have someone else figure it out. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get better at that dragon book. If people bought the book and then they start pushing out what they did, um, I'll see something that like, oh, I can try later on. You know,
Yeah.
it's the only way we can get better at tattooing. You know, it's the only way you can get better at the subject matter you're doing, because then if we're getting better at tattooing, then you only get better. You know, the art only gets better. I feel like some people try to cover complicated and make the dragon look badass, but they always look best stripped down. Yeah, I guess. I mean, mm, it goes back to what I was saying before. It goes back to Jared. It goes back to understanding the anatomy. You know, understanding the anatomy. And I even have a toy dragon. I don't even gonna lie. I have a little toy dragon I ordered on from Japan, and
Nice.
you can move the limbs up. You
Oh,
know,
it's purple.
any small, and you know how the Japanese make their toys. It's like all the little joints can move in any which way, and it's great. Like sometimes you do that. You know.
Like those Gundams.
Yes, definitely like them Gundams and stuff like that. Yeah, those are modern day space samurais. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're the most highly articulated toys, actually.
yep, pretty much. And they're like, oh, they tell you, oh, you gotta build it yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
I'm not gonna lie, I've built a couple of them.
You have?
Yeah, I
When
have.
I gotta get once I get my new studio, and I got the new studio that I'm moving into. Ah,
My son's ripped this guy apart, but yeah, I mean, he would
nice,
like the Kabuto helmet and everything. Like,
nice. Yeah, there's I I yeah, when I move into my new space, I have more space there, so I'm gonna have like a whole like I'm bringing all my. It's gonna be a little man cave and just have all my goofy shit that as an adult I have, because I can't have none of that stuff here. My girl's like, "You're a grown man. Why are you doing that?" So yeah. Back to dragons. I mean, one of the things that like one of the things that I had to change now was I horns. Like I think somebody was asking me about horns, and I was like, well, the reason why I don't do the I wanted my dragons just to kind of like stand out from the rest. Not every animal has straight horns. You know, you got so many different type of horned animals out there. So then I started changing up my horns a little bit. I just look at real deer horns, or look at just antlers, just different impalas. You know, there's impala horns. There's goat horns. You know, they turn in. The thing is, it's such a new subject matter that when you try to do it for the first time, you might get thrown off, and it doesn't look right. But I think the more and more you try to you the more times you do it, it'll look more tattooy. So that's another thing too that I work on now, is getting my horns down or getting the claws a little bit different, and um, working on the tail now. How do I want the tail to end? Like that's another thing too. It's like
yeah, everybody used to do that fan spiky tail, remember?
right.
Then I don't know where that went. Nobody's doing it anymore,
Yeah, yeah.
or where it even
No,
came from, because it wasn't in a whole lot of traditional stuff either.
no. Or just understanding where understanding how to finish that. Like, yeah, that's something that I've worked on for a while, and understand that more, because there's always something to to figure out, to approach it, and then be able to finish it. Make it.
What's that thing that they're usually holding? You know how sometimes they'll wrap around something. It looks like a Tonto blade or something sometimes at the end of their tail.
All right.
I,
So when I was doing that, I thought it was like a horn, because I saw somebody do another horn like it was a broken horn, but then like I so when I was one time when I was drawing the actual like um anatomy of the dragon, like I was thinking it was like the backbone, right? And then the backbone, as it's twisted, that piece comes out, because that's kind of like how I was kind of like working out the actual anatomy, kind of the structure of the body. So like if the tail twists like that, then what's going to pop out at the end might be the bone, or it might be like the top of the spine. It could be anything. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I've heard it could be a bone. It could be anything. There's some things that we don't know. That could have been an artist's personal, from a print from back in the day, because you don't know what the artist in Japan was thinking when he did that. He did that. It could have been the sign of for friendship from a clan member. I don't know it, but it was put in there, and then but there was no real story behind it. There is none. There's some are just made up. Some are just there for that. It's personal taste, I think, sometimes.
yeah, and actually that's a good segue into like how much of this stuff does change from probably province to province in China and Japan. I mean, we've all kind of heard about like, the Japanese composition of a dragon with the head of a camel, ears of a cow, scales of a koi, I think belly of a snake and eagles of a talon or something.
Mm-hmm.
I heard beard of a man. There's like 9 of them or something. I found out some other ones today that I hadn't even known before, and it was some of the Chinese ones. They'll have the deer horns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And mouth of a pig. I never knew about this one.
Right.
Uh,
I've heard of that one.
and then a horse's head, eyes of a rabbit, scales of a fish,
Yeah,
abdomen.
they go deeper in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Abdomen of a clam. Sometimes tiger claws, sometimes eagle claws, sometimes hawk claws.
But then, and so then you got to think about it too. There were certain families that were like, I was tiger. Like it's, if you were a year of the tiger, if you're year of the cat, you got a tiger. Oh no, if you're, what is it? You're a tiger. It it's depending on what you're. All right, so some people get dragons depending on what animal that they identified with. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I want claws because I'm into so and so. So you don't. There's so many different ways to approach it. Yeah. It's maybe there weren't any deers in this area, so that it's like a different. Maybe this certain deer horn was a certain way. Like I had this deer that I killed, and this horn was looking like this. It's not like any other horn of a deer. There's like so many stories like that. It's like, because there was a Chinese bookstore in New York that I used to go to, and um and it was at a time when video games were big and stuff like that. And I was playing video games and just starting to tattoo. And I remember getting this book, and it breaks down all these different things, and there was like certain families that um like this, and it's just there's so many ways to approach it. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, like as an identifying thing, especially in Japan, it's like this family of tattooers, they all do the dragon with heads like this,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they do flower a certain way or whatever. Yeah, it's I like the idea of changing it up
Mm-hmm.
though. It's more interesting to me.
Yeah, those rules and those laws for Japan are crazy. Like the tattooer that only does cherry blossoms, because the people in the province, they identify with the blossom because it's of a certain family. And then, there's a botan over here, so he mainly does botans, and in Kiku's, there's a region of Kiku. You know, like it's a, you know, it's things that we don't really as Westerners understand. You know, because but it's just how it is. It's like how your favorite basketball team. You know, I remember when I was younger, it was I did everybody that loved the Bulls. They wanted the Bulls tattoo. You know, because
Oh yeah.
people, I'm a tourist, so they want the bull head and
Yeah.
you know, there's mermaid tattoos because they identify with being, you know, Pisces or whatever. It's just this kind of uh, identification, and that was also translated into tattooing and translated into the dragon in itself. Um, but the way I approach it, I kind of my dragons are kind of the body of a snake, um, legs of a you know legs of a tiger, kind
Mm.
of, you know, and then as it tapers down, it's like well, eagle, you know, eagle claws, you know, and, you know, head of a camel and you know, of a horns of a deer, you know, but then ears are not of a pig. I have ears of a goat, you know,
Oh,
like yeah. So mine are yeah, and I even placed the horns a little bit closer to the eye socket, so like over here where the you know, so like I not in the back up here, but my horns are more here because of you know horned animals that their horns start like right here, you know what I mean, and then it comes out. So like everybody puts their own little personal taste into it, you know. So
yeah, I like that.
um, and now like I was watching Spirit of the Way and Haku's he has a face of a dog, you know,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
his whisker is super long. So now some of my dragons, I'm starting to just do super long whiskers, you know, like all the way back, as long as the body itself. It's just how
Yeah.
you draw it, how you make it look good, um, you know. And even that movie inspired me to do my dragons a certain way because the way Studio Ghibli, um, their
You see,
interpretation. Oh, dude, it's there's you know they even did a spirit dragon when in the bathhouse when she gives the when she gives the I think what she did she unplugged the garbage and it popped and then it cleaned out the river spirit, and it comes out and it has multiple legs and it's moving. It has the mask on and it moves and it flies around. It flies out the window, and I just said to myself, "That's amazing!" Like they animated that, and I said to myself, "I want my dragons to kind of like have that feeling, you know, like
mm,
that." That's even how I even think about things. Like when he draws Haku and Haku's like flying in the air and he's being chased by those pieces of paper and he's doing all these twists and turns in the air. I was like, that's how that you know, in my mind, that's how I see dragons moving. This is something that has no wings. It was pure magic. So you can kind of draw something that magical like that, and you know, you can have your own interpretation on it. You know, and it's just because it's a magical creature. What does a magical creature look like? We can't really define something with magic, but
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So to see it animated is a nice thing. I mean, yeah, they fly through the sky. They're not crawling on their bellies like snakes.
yeah,
So that's another element too. They're corkscrewing instead of just having their bellies on the ground the whole time or something,
right,
right?
right.
Um, Actually, I heard of some done. Yeah, I mean, you always hear about the snake of a belly. I've heard of some of them. There was this one story where the world was divided into five different animal kingdoms, and they all like fought, or no, they all fucked this two-headed or three-headed monkey creature god thing, and
I never heard.
they, she laid like 100 eggs, and then they all came back and stole like a bunch of eggs until she only had one left. She hatched this egg. It was a python. The python went back and fought all these different and ate all these different animals to try and collect the eggs back again. And as a result of getting all this protein, grew a cow's head, deer horns,
Mm.
was,
That makes
and
sense.
dragon.
That makes sense. It
That's so different
incorporated.
one, right? Turning into the climbing the waterfall.
Yeah, you know that's another story. I mean, there's even comic book characters that are like that. Like they can adapt each person's powers into themselves, and now they're some of the most powerful, you know, beings in comic books. You know, like Amazo is one of those guys. He can look at you and then copy your powers, and then you know he'll grow a cape out. You know, or he'll do something, and he'll look like this uh this you know different. He'll look like a different, totally different creature. Something too, like when you try to draw a dragon with all these animals, uh, different characteristics, it kind of looks like it's like a weird creature. It's just a weird creature, but it's powerful in itself. You know.
It is. It looks like we got a countdown going on here.
Uh,
4, 13, 12. Oh, I didn't know that happened.
yeah.
Anyways, I'll let you go though, man. It was great talking to you. We covered